And here's what happens a lot of times. And we talked about going out. It says on the program that we go out and we're gonna talk about gathering cattle. And here's the big thing that most people do when they think about gathering cattle. First of all, what happens is, and I see this a lot with my buddies, we'll be going out and we'll be talking about how good of hands we are, especially when I'm in Texas. When I'm in Texas, this happens a lot. That's funny. So we're riding along, we're talking about how handy we are and how good we can rope and everything. And I was at a feed yard, and there's some real good guys that I love to give them a bad time because they're very good hands. We're riding along, and they're talking about all these sorry cattle they've got. Their buyers are buying all these wild cattle, and they're talking about how good of hands they are. And the cattle get up and run off. And they say, look at them wild suckers. I said, yeah, they've been telling us they've been going to run off for 5 minutes. But we were walking right along, just stumbling along and not even paying attention, and we caused them to run off. We made them run off. So what we've got to do is we've got to start being aware of where that pressure zone is. And just like when I reach out and shake somebody's hand when I meet them, it tells them a lot about me by my handshake. The way I approach these cattle the first time, whether it's out in the pasture or whatever, when I approach and I start seeing them be influenced by me right here, now I know I'm in their pressure zone. I'll step out and I'll say, okay, here I am. Look at me. Look at me. And I call it hooking cattle on. Just like hooking a horse on, I'll just hook them on. And I'm just getting their front feet still and getting them both ears looking at me. If they leave me, I'll just go with them and stay with them. But see, now I got these cattle hooked on. And now they know that I mean something. So this is hooking cattle on. And that's my first presence. Now I got them on both eyes. They can see me real good. And now I've got to go somewhere else. I don't know if I can get wide enough here. And I'm just going to ask them to go straight forward. Now, if I think about walking around behind these cattle and pushing them up, they're going to follow me right around. And if I was trying to go straight forward, if I go way out around them and I come in behind them like I would do if I was getting on the interstate or getting in a line, the cattle turn and look at me as I go around. Now they're headed the exact opposite direction of where I want them to go. So instead of me wanting to go around behind cattle and get in and drive behind them like you do on the interstate, I do like a border collie dog. A border collie dog, they position themselves, get the animals looking where they want them to go, then they start going back and forth across them. Back and forth across. You'll never see a border collie dog unless he's trained by a hotshot trainer to get right in behind the cattle. He's always on the right eye or the left eye, one or the other. And so as you see here, as I step across here on this calf here, just by switching across that one that's closest, he moved away from me. Just by doing this right there, that right there, just that movement back and forth on that outside one's eye here, he's going to want to move up and get out. He doesn't have anywhere to go. This calf right here, I'll just switch hands. Just by that, he moved off straight. You don't want to walk in here behind him and shove him. Now, he doesn't have anywhere to go, and he'll either turn around and fight me or change directions because he can't see me, and he turns his head to see where I'm at and putting that pressure from. And if he follows his nose, I was trying to go to the gate there, now he's going over there. Now what happens next once you start these cattle wrong? So if I was riding out in the pasture and these cattle are all grazing, I would get about 10% of my bunch, or maybe 5%, just how they were shaped up. And I'd get about in this position here, and I would start riding or driving, walking right through these cattle. I'd walk right through their hip, and I wouldn't turn or deviate. I would go straight on through. As soon as I got through the other side, or I'd watch my leaders, if they started to turn, they would tell me I need to turn back. So now I've got my herd where I'm behind them where I need to be, and I might stay out here. They might say, why don't you stay over here? Because if you stay over here, I'll push this calf, that calf right there, I'll push his head forward. I can send him straight. Well, I should have been able to. It doesn't always work like you say in the book either. So from right out here, I have a triangle where I have a zone of influence. If they're turning to their left, I can ride out wider. And I can put pressure on those leaders from out wide where they can see me. If they're turning to their right, they're going to the right where I don't want them to, I can duck over here, which causes them to want to turn and look at me from this side over here, and that'll bring them back to the front. Or I can ride completely through the other side and come back this way. Now when I'm talking about riding, for me it's horseback. For some of you it might be a four-wheeler. And that's just fine. So when we're gathering, that's fine. I don't care if you're horseback or with a four-wheeler, but with a horse, when you turn, like when I turn my horse into these cattle, so I've learned since I was that big, you never turn your horse away from the cattle. When I turn my horse, I would never turn my horse like this. I would turn my horse into the cattle. But the problem with a lot of horses is they don't know how to back through a turn. So when I turn, if my horse will only turn walking forward, I turn him right into that cow, now I split my herd. But if I can back my horse through a turn, I can make it and I can position myself properly. Now here's the difference with a four-wheeler. If you ride a four-wheeler, you cannot back your four-wheeler through a turn. It only goes forward in a turn. And so when I'm going to turn my four-wheeler, I'm coming along here, and I turn like this, now I've just either split off my back of my herd, or I've caused them to kind of jump into the other cattle. So with a four-wheeler, I encourage people to turn away from the cattle. Turn away and make a ribbon and come back. Because you can't have that backing turn that you would with a horse. And the problem with four-wheelers is a lot of times we position ourselves wrong, and we drop a calf back or something, and then we hurry up and go fix it. And we've taught the cattle to get by us, and some horses aren't broke good enough. Some four-wheelers turn a lot better than a lot of horses I've ridden too. So if you make a mistake, then you hurry up and try to go fix it with a four-wheeler, and that's when people get in wrecks. So really be careful about how you're doing things when you're out there in the pasture gathering. Now when I'm gathering cattle, I think of it the same way I would think of starting a colt in the round pen. When I'm gathering cattle or bringing them in, that would be the same thing when I first walk into a round pen and start working that horse around in the round pen loose. I want to get them broke to drive. So if I get them broke to drive and I get them in the corral, they'll be taking my pressure better once I get inside their flight zone. If you can't get within a half a mile of these cattle before they start running off, and you trap them and get them in a corral, you're going to be within 20, 30, 50, 100 feet of them. They're going to be breaking down the fences. And you better get them worked quick or have some pretty stout fences. So we got to kind of establish that pressure zone before we get them in the pen. Now, if you have real gentle cattle, call them in. That's fine. That's fine. If you want to call them in, that's just fine.